All right. So today is an interesting class. We're talking about counters, amendments, and modifications. Well, let's start with where these forms are. So I just want to start. Let's see, I have to go sharing. That's fine.
It's going to be positive.
Okay. So we need to make sure. Okay, great. So just want to make sure that everyone can log into CAR. So this is where we get our contracts. So all our real estate contracts are at car.org. So from CAR, to get to our transaction, our contracts, you'll need to sign in. And then once you're signed in, you have to follow the road to transactions. So it's transactions. And then again, I'm going to go down to transactions, access now.
One more time. Sorry,
We're following the transaction road.
yeah.
So once we're signed in, we're going to go to access realtor secure transactions.
Yeah.
Transactions. And then down here under CAR member benefits, the first box is transactions. Access now, which will take us to another screen. It validates our membership, and then we're going to continue to transactions. It's just a crazy thing. So that will eventually get us to a dashboard where we can create a new transaction. So either you're going to be on this screen showing transactions, or you're going to be at the dashboard. Wherever you are, it doesn't matter. You're going to select new transaction. So when you select new transaction, then you're going to get a question like, what kind of transaction do you want to start? Is it a new listing? Is it an offer? Is it a lease? This is really only for categorization purposes. It really doesn't matter what you choose. But let's just say we're going to write an offer. So we'll just select new purchase or offer. And that'll take us to another screen. We're going to name it. So I'll usually use the property address to name a transaction. So let's just say the transaction is for 1100 South Livonia. I'll say 1100 South Livonia. I don't need to fill anything else out, but I can just check like it's a residential property, it's active. That's really it. I'm going to press save. Yeah.
So let's say if you are doing a buy transaction, if you click
MLS Connect?
yeah.
Okay, so we'll talk about MLS Connect real quick. So thank you. So there is a button here or click a link for MLS Connect. So if you are writing an offer and you have the MLS number, so every property that's listed in the MLS gets assigned an MLS number. If you have the MLS number, you can press this MLS Connect hyperlink, and it'll ask you here for the listing number. You can enter it right there. Now, if it's a condo or a single family residence, then that's fine. If it's a lease, you'll want to check this and choose lease. If it's land, you'll want to go to land. If it's a 2-unit or more, you'll probably select residential income. The issue is that if you put the MLS number in that box and then try to find it, it won't appear if it's in the wrong category. So make sure that you're searching in the right category. And then you can include a property photo and press find. Hopefully it will populate this. So that's nice. So what that does is it puts the listing agent's information, address, phone number, email address, the property address. It automatically fills everything in for you. What I have found though is I will still be correcting things in it, like it will capitalize the city. And I like to have everything uniform, so I only like to have the first letters in a city capitalized. So anyways, but that MLS Connect is very useful to get the other agent's information into your transaction. Hope I didn't lose anyone. Basically from here, you're gonna select new transaction. You'll select what kind it is, and that'll take you to, okay, so new, I'm selecting what I'm doing, new offer. I'm gonna enter the property address, 1100 South residential property. Now, I can select MLS Connect or not, and then I'm gonna press save. And that will create a new transaction. Now, from here, I can enter this stuff here if I want to. It'll pre-populate fields in my contract, or I can just go straight into the contract. So this is where we access all our contracts. Over here in the upper right-hand corner, you see it says all forms. I'm gonna click that. Okay. So there's really no difference between clicking all forms or clicking that arrow. It just takes the same thing over. So this is where all the forms are. The easiest way to search for forms is in this box. And if, let's say, you want to search for counter offers, you just type the word counter, hit enter, and look at it, or it'll automatically just bring up everything that has the word counter in it. If I'm looking for addendum, I'll type addendum, and automatically everything that uses the word addendum is here. Let's say pet. See if anything pops up. Nothing pops up. They changed that form. We're going to talk about it today. There used to be something called a pet addendum. It's no longer called that. It's no longer called pet addendum. It's called something else. We'll look at that. So anyways, I just wanted to show you where the forms are. So that's how you get to them at car.org. Go back to camera. All right.
Hi, JJ.
Hello.
Hi, can you please show me where you got the forms again?
Yes.
Okay.
So I went.
Okay.
So basically, you want to log in. You want to log into CAR.
Yes, I'm in CR, and when you
CAR.
click new,
Okay. Then when I log into CAR, I log in, and then I go transactions.
right, okay,
Again, transactions. You're already past this, I think,
okay,
and then from here, I'm waiting for it to validate me, and then I'll continue to transactions.
okay,
And then I'm going to press new when this gets me there.
okay. Press new.
Press new, and then now I have to select what kind of transaction I'm doing. Is it a new listing? Is
Okay.
it an offer? Is it a lease?
Mhm.
Okay, so when I do new, doesn't matter. I'm going to go new listing this time. New listing, and then I'm going to type in the address.
Okay.
1100 South Livonia Avenue,
Okay.
and then residential, and then I press save.
Press save first, okay,
Yeah. When you press save, it's going to bring you to the transaction screen.
okay,
And then to get to the documents, I'm going to press all forms, and then I can start selecting what forms I'm going to use. So normally, the top used forms are going to be the first one, which is the California Residential Purchase Agreement, and then the third one is the Residential Listing Agreement.
oh, okay,
Those are the most common. So let's just say I want to do a purchase agreement. I'm gonna click purchase agreement, and it automatically appear here to the left, purchase agreement. If I want to add to it, I'll just click all forms again, and I'll add something like the market conditions advisory, and then I can just click it, and it'll appear. Yeah. So that's how we get forms into our transaction. And then when we want to put more information in, we can click on the form itself, and then you can choose one of these. I just heard from someone that this classic editor is going to be going away. So we'll use the new form editor. And then that'll allow you to go in and edit the transaction. So then we can start editing it directly.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah. All right, so let's see, I want to go back to the camera. Screen sharing. Uh, Video, main camera, Logi rally camera. I guess you can see me. That's not. I guess you can see me here. Not that it really matters. You don't need to see me. All right. So what I have here is basically, so let's talk about the order of counter offers. So today's class is about counter offers, amendments, addendums, modifications. Pass those out. So okay, so here's the yeah, it's kind of awesome. Thank you. Well, for you. The rest goes to everyone. There's only one page each. So basically, I'm looking at this from the point of view of the listing side, but it really doesn't matter. So the way that this works is we have buyer counter one, seller counter offer one. So how does this work? The buyer makes an offer, right? That's where it starts. The buyer makes an offer. And then the seller has to respond to the offer. So seller can do three things. The seller can accept the offer. They can reject it and not do anything, or they can counter it. So usually the seller will write a counter offer to clean up the offer. When I say clean up, I mean get the terms straight that the seller wants. So usually the seller is in charge of selling their property. Like the seller's in charge. I mean, it's their property, you know, they're going to sell it on their terms. The buyer is going to make an offer of the terms they want. The seller doesn't have to agree to anything, right? So, but if the seller wants to make a deal, they're going to try to negotiate. We'll try it. Us as agents, we try to put the deal together. That's our job. Put the deal together. If I'm representing a buyer, my job is not to get my buyer the best price. My job is to get them the property. Hopefully we get a good price. I'll try, but my ultimate goal is to get them the property. Because if we don't get a property, we're not agents. Like an agent is there to get a property. Okay, so the sequence is buyer makes an offer to the seller. The seller will then respond using seller counter offer number one. Okay. The buyer will then make a counter offer, buyer counter offer number one. Then the seller can counter seller counter number two, and then buyer will counter buyer counter offer number two. So now the seller has two different counter offers to choose from. They can use seller counter offer one or seller multiple counter offer number one. So the difference between the seller counter offer and the seller multiple counter offer is that the seller multiple counter offer cannot be accepted by the buyer. It can't be accepted and binding the seller. So talking about contracts, you have a contract when buyer and seller both agree, right? That's a contract. Now, the multiple counter is there specifically to protect the seller from someone accepting first. So let's say there's two offers. You're the listing agent now. You represent the seller. You receive an offer from this buyer and you receive an offer from this buyer. You can send back a multiple counter offer to both parties, and it doesn't matter who, if, let's say you put a price and they both sign I accept. They both sign I accept and they both send it back. It doesn't matter who sent it first. So that used to be a thing really a long time ago in real estate. It mattered who got it in first. It's not like that anymore. So, because you have to have an acceptance and then a delivery, right? There has to be delivery. So even if it's accepted, it still has to go back to the other party. Anyways, that's all been eliminated by the fact that the seller signs last. On a multiple counter offer, the seller is the one who has the final acceptance. Okay. So buyer makes an offer, seller comes back, multiple counter offer. You have to have more than one offer to sign a multiple counter offer. But that protects the seller. So now the seller can respond to both buyers, wait to see how both buyers respond to the seller counter offer. And then the seller can either make another counter offer or accept one of them. Okay, depending what it was.
So the multiple counter offer is a form?
Yes, so let's look at counter offers. So we'll go back. Oh, actually, from this screen where we're add forms, I'll write counter here. We'll see what pops up. Okay, so this is taking me back to my screen with my forms here. I'm going to press Alt Forms, and then I'm going to type counter. So I have buyer counter offer 1, and I have seller counter offer 1. And I also have seller multiple counter offer 1. Notice how there is no buyer multiple counter offer. There's no such thing as a buyer multiple counter offer. So you have seller, you have buyer counter 1, seller counter 1. So buyer makes an offer, then the first counter coming back from the seller will be either this one or this one. So let's take a look at them. The seller counter offer.
Number 1.
Well, yeah, seller counter offer 1. Right, so we'll just put a 1. Seller counter offer 1 dated today. Now you are making a counter offer to the purchase agreement. That's usually what happens. So you know what? Let's look at the purchase agreement real quick.
Yeah.
So what happens is the listing agent receives this purchase agreement. This is the purchase agreement. It has tons and tons and tons of terms in it. It's talking about the price, the deposit, the length of escrow, the loan amount, contingency times, talks about the appraisal time, the investigation of property, how long the seller has to give disclosures. These are a lot of terms. What's included, what's not included, who we're using for title, who we're using for escrow. There's a lot of terms in here. So now, as a listing agent, we need to review all the terms of the offer. Okay, now what's going to happen is on the last page of the offer, on the very last page of offer, it says seller's signature, acceptance of offer. This is on page 15 of 16. Okay, now the seller warrants that seller is the owner of the property or has the authority to execute this agreement. Seller accepts the above offer and agrees to sell the property on the above terms and conditions. Seller has read and acknowledges receipt of a copy of this agreement and authorizes agent to deliver a signed copy to the buyer. Seller's acceptance is subject to the attached counter offer or backup offer addendum or both checked below. Now, when you are responding to one buyer, you're going to check here seller counter offer, and then you're going to the seller is going to sign this, and you're going to attach seller counter offer number one. Okay? If you are sending multiple counter offers, you're going to check the box again and attach seller multiple counter. So you see here, it says seller counter offer, which can be CAR form SCO or SMCO. Seller counter offer or seller multiple counter offer. Now, basically what's happening here is the seller is saying, I accept all the terms of your offer subject to my counter offer. In the counter offer, you will only put the terms that you're changing. You'll only put the terms in the counter offer that you're changing, right? So that's it. So when the offer goes and it says 17-day inspection, 17-day appraisal, 17-day loan contingency, if you only counter the price, the seller is saying, I accept your 17 days on all of your inspections and your loan and your appraisal, that's fine. I'm only changing the price. Okay? So the only thing that's changing is what you're putting in the counteroffer. Now, so let's say the buyer made an offer to the seller made a counter. Now the buyer wants to change some terms. So let's just say the buyer made an offer for 17-day inspection, 17-day loan, 17-day appraisal. The seller comes back on seller counter offer one and says, I'm shortening your inspection to 10 days and your loan and appraisal at 4 to 14 days. Okay. Now the buyer calls their lender and says, they're shortening my appraisal and lending time to 14 days. Can you do that? And the lender says, no, I need the full 17 days. Now the buyer is going to give me a counter. The buyer's fine with the price, but they're just going to change the terms of the loan and appraisal. They're going to counter back and say loan and appraisal to be 17 days because they're only changing that term. They're accepting my price that I countered with. That makes sense? Yeah. You're only changing you're only putting down what you're changing. Here's what I see a lot of agents do that is confusing. So I don't like anything confusing in my contracts. I don't want two people to be able, or even one person to read it and have different interpretations. What I see a lot of agents put is all other terms to remain the same. That is a very, very confusing statement. All other terms to remain the same. What does that mean? Which other terms? The terms in the original agreement or the terms on the counteroffer? I don't know. All other terms to remain the same. I don't know what that means. Does that mean you're not agreeing to everything else in my counteroffer? So I don't like to see all other terms to remain the same. It's a very confusing statement. Maybe the intention was that you're accepting maybe all the other terms, but it's not for sure.
What do you put in there? I mean,
the only thing that should be on the counteroffer is what you're changing.
you don't mention all that. I see a lot of.
No, never mention anything. If you're mentioning something in a counteroffer, it's because you're changing the term.
Oh, I should just put one for you.
Right, so let's say an offer comes in from a buyer and it's including the living room chandelier or the dining room chandelier.
Right.
Okay, if a seller wants to exclude the chandelier, there's gonna be a counteroffer that says dining room chandelier is excluded. If the buyer wants it, again, if they want it, they're not accepting that it's included. They need to give a counter saying dining room chandelier is included, right? So that but I'm not saying all other terms to remain the same because that doesn't.
I see a lot of agents do that.
All right, so now in standard practice, this offer will get signed and initialed on every page and where it's required. And then the seller will also fill out seller counter one with the terms they're changing, right? Because don't forget, on the purchase agreement, we did check the box counter offer. And it's saying that the seller is accepting all the terms. Seller's acceptance is subject to the attached counteroffer. So we're accepting all the terms of the offer and we're also attaching a counteroffer, changing only the terms we don't agree with. That in normal course of real estate, we would return the entire contract signed with our counteroffer. Always remember, you have to check this box. If you don't check that box and your seller signs this, you've accepted a deal. All right, always check, do never forget to check this box. If you don't check this box, you've accepted the deal. You've accepted the offer. You have to check this box, seller counter offer, if you want the counter offer to apply.
What's that, what page is that?
This is page 15 of 16.
Okay.
Which documents?
This is the purchase offer. This is the purchase agreement.
JJ, so every time you send the seller multiple counter, you send the offer as well.
So that should be done. Now,
Oh.
if you're the listing agent and let's say you have 10 offers or you have 5 offers, it's gonna be a real pain for you and the seller to sign every single purchase agreement and do a counter. For 5 people, it's an enormous amount of paperwork. So what happens most of the time happens when you have multiples, is the agent will only send the counter offer. Okay? Now, when that happens, when you only send the counter offer, whoever's offer that finally gets accepted, you need to go back now and have the seller sign the original offer. This is when you're gonna check the box and, then you need to make sure everyone's signing appropriately. The seller might give you some pushback and say, because this original offer was $1 million, they didn't accept $1 million, the deal's over 1.2. So they're gonna say, I'm not signing this, it says $1 million. It's totally common, happens all the time. The seller won't wanna sign this because they don't agree with the terms on it. They only agree with the terms on the counter. But you have to explain to them, look, there's a lot of terms in this offer. You need to sign this subject to, you're gonna have to explain to them, you're accepting this subject to the counter and that counter and that counter, that this is how you have to sign.
Okay, I have a question. So let's say we accept one.
Okay, I'm sorry, start from the beginning. Who wrote the offer? I wrote the offer to you. You're the seller.
You're the seller, you
Okay, I wrote-
accepted my offer.
Oh, I'm the seller. You wrote an offer to me. Okay.
Yes, and we did the seller counter offer.
I made a counter offer to you.
Yes, and I agreed to it, or I sent you whatever, but I'm
Okay.
just trying to figure out the final offer at the end.
Okay, so
So
if
when
I
you-
sent you a multiple counter offer, because I had 2 offers.
Okay, so are you sending a multiple counter offer to me and the other person? So that means that I know that you're actually looking at other offers.
If
because it's a multiple.
If you as a buyer's agent receive a multiple counter offer, you know that there's more than one offer on the table.
Okay,
Now let's look at the multiple counter offer. So the multiple counter offer says that we're gonna put some terms in here. And it also says that I may be countering you on the same or different terms that are going to other people. I don't have to give the same counter offer to multiple people. I can change what I'm doing. So I'll talk strategy with you in a second. But what happens is when the seller, this is only binding when the seller signs paragraph 8. Selection of accepted multiple counteroffer. Note to seller, do not sign in this box until after buyer signs in paragraph 7. Do not sign in this box if this seller multiple counteroffer is subject to another counteroffer. Seller accepts this seller multiple counteroffer. So the seller has the last signature. The seller is the final say when you're in multiples. It protects the seller.
Yeah.
Right? Let's say I send out my multiple counteroffers and there's another agent over here on the sidelines that writes an offer all of a sudden out of nowhere, and they write an offer for more than anyone did, right? The seller still has the ability to go accept that offer.
okay. So the reason for the multiple counter offer is that I'm sending, let's say I'm a seller's agent now. I'm sending this multiple counter offer to 5 buyers.
Yeah.
In the same email? Yeah, I'm just attaching everyone
No.
so
no,
what?
You're gonna prepare a counter offer for each offer.
So why send a multiple counter offer and not just a counter offer to each person?
Because
Because
okay, here's the counter offer, may not be used as a multiple. Let's just look at the counter offer real quick. The counter offer, the seller is gonna write the terms that they're changing here. And then the buyer accepts this. If the buyer accepts this, we have a deal, that's it.
Mhm.
If the buyer, so let's say you wrote an offer for $1 million. You wrote an offer for $1 million. The seller countered you 1.1.
Mhm.
and your buyer signs here on paragraph 5, we have a deal. The seller is obligated to sell. Deal done.
Okay, but what if I already sent a multiple counteroffer to a bunch of people?
If you send a multiple counteroffer to a bunch of people, but one person you sent the regular counteroffer and that person accepts, they got the deal.
Oh, I get you. So you're telling me that the multiple counteroffer is not binding?
Correct. The multiple counteroffer is not binding on the seller until the seller has the final signature.
Wow.
Can you say instead of sending the main purchase agreement, say that on the counter, saying everything that is specified in the original purchase agreement?
That's automatic.
I mean, so you say you don't change anything else, all other terms.
The only terms that you're gonna put here in this other terms box is what you're changing.
Are you saying that you are also sending the original sales
Right,
agreement?
so if I have one offer, let's say you write an offer on my property,
Uh-huh.
I'm going to either accept your offer
Right,
or I'm going to give you a counter,
right,
but I'm gonna have this all filled out,
right,
signed, and it'll say, and I'm gonna check the counter offer box.
right.
I'm gonna give this to you fully signed with a counter offer. And then if you accept the counter offer, we have a deal, we're done.
I see. So you send original purchase agreement, is that what you're saying then, no?
The original purchase agreement, my seller will sign it.
Uh-huh,
I'm gonna check the box,
right,
attached counter offer, subject to the counter offer,
right, right,
and I'll include the counter offer with it.
right.
Now, your buyer can accept on paragraph 5,
Mhm.
but they can also check this box. They're accepting it subject to buyer counter offer number 1. Right? So now you wrote an offer, I gave you seller counter 1.
Mhm.
You don't agree with the price I countered you at, you're lowering it. Now you accept my counter,
Right,
subject to buyer counter offer 1.
No.
And you come back with a new price. Now, as the seller, I'm gonna now do seller counter offer number 2.
Yeah.
And it's gonna say, I am accepting your offer, subject to seller counter offer. No, okay. You wrote an offer. This is the seller counter offer number 1.
Right.
Seller counter offer, you wrote an offer for $1 million. Seller countered 1.2.
Right.
Okay. Now you're gonna have to sign this subject to buyer counter 1. So we're gonna go. We need a form called buyer counter offer 1.
KJ,
Yeah.
what about if,
But basically what's happening is each one gets accepted subject to the new counter offer, and then there's finally gonna be an acceptance. Now, whenever anyone shows me a deal, I wanna see the original RPA. I wanna see seller counter 1, buyer counter 1, seller counter 2, buyer. And what I do is when I'm trying to figure out the terms of what was finally accepted, I'm starting with the original purchase agreement. I'm writing down all the terms of the purchase agreement. Then I go to seller counter 1. If the price changed, I cross out the price, I put the new price. Terms, and then I have to follow the order. And then by the last one, I'm gonna know exactly what the terms of the deal are. Then I need to check that against escrow. Because all this paperwork, once we have an accepted offer, needs to go to escrow and it needs to go to the lender. Okay, the lender is gonna review this and escrow is gonna review it. Now, escrow is gonna generate their own escrow paperwork. I need to know the terms of my deal and match it to what escrow put. I need to make sure it matches. So what usually happens is, once we have an accepted offer, I will email it to escrow with my client's contact info. Escrow is gonna send me a draft of the escrow instructions before they get sent for signature. I'm gonna look at the draft and make sure it matches the terms of the agreement. Sometimes, a lot of times, I'm gonna say, correct this, correct that. Or I'm gonna say, looks perfect, send it.
And you sign it, as binding right now.
So
Okay, I know.
once a buyer and seller both agree, that's a deal, that's an accepted deal.
But it's all is the seller's decision, it's no.
When you're dealing with multiple counteroffer, the seller has the final decision. If you send a regular counteroffer, the buyer can accept it and is binding on the seller.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what happens that you sent a multiple counter offer to bunch,
Okay,
and then a few came back and you wanna accept. First of all, what do you do if some of them are the same, JJ?
okay, so let's talk strategy for a second. You have a property that's well priced and you get 5 offers. Generally, what'll happen is you'll have maybe 1 or 2 lowball offers. You'll have someone giving
Cash
the
offer.
exact asking price. And then you'll have hopefully someone that set themselves apart from everybody by coming over asking. That's usually what happens. And if you have a lot of offers, you'll have a few under, you'll have a bunch around the asking price and then a few above, way above.
Hey, JJ.
Yeah,
Hi, it's Cheryl. I have a quick question. So you said there could be multiple counter offers. How would it play out if someone did come in like a low ball or lower, but it's all cash? Does that bump them up to the top of the food chain?
That doesn't mean.
so my response to any buyer's agent who is looking to get information from me regarding price or where they need to be on price. The only response I'm gonna give to any agent is I know my seller will take at least asking. I'll never give anyone a price below asking. I can't do that. Because I have a fiduciary agreement to my seller to get them at least asking. That's why we listed the price.
Okay. Right,
Now-
I didn't mean like low,
No.
low, low. I just-
All right, so now we're talking strategy. So you have offers below asking, you have offers at asking and offers above asking. The low ball offers, I will counter them with a really high price. An actual high price. The people that came in the highest, I'll counter them highest and best.
How do you do that? Can you?
Say seller.
Highest and best.
I'm gonna go over with you, but the counter term will be purchase price to be buyer's highest and best, which forces them to give a new number.
Okay.
Because they're already the highest.
But you are not giving, this is the final,
I never like to use the word final. I don't like to use that word.
because I saw so many times that they send it, they don't even counter it, they send an
Right.
email with just one line.
So just because it says highest and final, doesn't mean there can't be more rounds going. I have gone up to number 10 before. Okay, I have had that many counter offers. So just because someone says final, it still may not be final. But you have to know what you're dealing with on their side. Communication is very important, right? So,
But you can also ignore the other, just answer to one that you see is the best.
the seller can do whatever they want.
Right.
That's the bottom
You don't
line.
need to answer all of them.
The
You can
seller
pick up the one that
do
you like.
whatever they want.
Right.
Now, we're here to guide them.
Yeah, that is the part that
That's the part.
sometimes that
Right, the listing agent says to you, sorry,
you see that.
sorry.
No, you see that the listing agent even accepted the offer that was even lower than the offer
Yeah,
with the cash, and you
Right.
never know.
okay,
what
so
happened.
Cheryl said, if you have a cash offer, isn't that the best offer you can get, right? So would a seller want to take a lower cash offer than a higher offer that has a loan in it?
It depends
Okay,
how much.
So you
interest.
need to look, the answer is you need to look at the whole picture.
Right.
If I have, an NBA player or an NFL player
Yeah.
or an actor or someone that is showing me the cash, but they put a loan in their offer because they want to take debt on the property, they're not paying cash. It's still a good buyer, right? Now, you still have an inspection contingency, like everyone still has the ability to break the contract. I'm looking for someone who is going to do the deal. Personal. I want my seller, now I can advise the seller, but the seller's gonna do whatever they want. But my advice is to go with the person who has the highest likelihood of buying the property, closing. So if I have 2 buyers, one's an investor and one is a family, I think the family is gonna be way more emotional about buying that property than the investor.
Yeah.
An investor can move on to the next one, move on to the next one. There's no emotional. If they find a better, if they're in escrow and the property down the street comes on the market for 50,000 less, they'll move their money to the 150,000 less, right? That's an investor. But a family with the kids come in and they, that's my room, that's my room, that's my room. That's the one I want, because the kids are like, when are we moving? When are we moving? You know, so I want the emotionally attached person to the
Do you
property.
think it's important to write the letter and attach to the offer?
He said, no, it's illegal now.
So
Yes, that's what is happening.
I used to advise my buyers to write letters and put a picture. Now, the danger is,
Yeah.
here's the danger for the seller. A letter comes and then the buyer sues them for discrimination. So there is a danger to doing it. The buyer can basically say, you denied me based upon something totally different, right? So in our listing agreement, there is, let's just look at our listing. Since you bring that up, we have to look at the listing agreement. But I used to ask my buyers to write letters. I did, because I want them to pull on the emotional heartstrings of the seller. I won't, yeah.
And
It's the
as a,
same, it's the same thing as,
and as a buyer agent, you
Yeah.
cannot do really anything when you see that the listing is closed and they accepted, for example.
once there's an acceptance, there's an acceptance.
Yeah, I know, they accepted the offer that is much less than the offer that you put, and your offer was cash. For example, 15 days escrow and higher than the price they accepted.
Right, so the seller's
You
gonna
cannot
go
do
with,
anything.
the seller's gonna go with whoever they want to.
But how would you know?
You,
How would you know
Because
what
when
price?
it's closed,
Oh, after
it's
it's-
showing.
when it's done,
Yeah, when it's
yeah.
done, it's showing after 30 days.
so
But I don't think so that many, I think that is some tricky that some agents do.
Well,
Because I don't think so any seller wanna sell their properties less. I think some of these big agents,
so
they just wanna be double agent, then they do that.
but hold on, I'll throw this out to you. One, there is something,
JJ,
One second,
one, there is,
sorry.
one, there is something you can do. You can call the agent and offer to be the backup. You can offer to be the first backup offer. Because there is a chance that that deal will fall out of escrow, and if you are the first backup, you automatically take first position and your offer becomes binding. The second thing is, to JJ's point earlier, the other thing that you can do and what you should do is you need to position yourself as the agent who is capable of closing the deal. If your offer is less or underpriced or whatever the case may be, if you can establish a form of communication with that other agent to assure them that you know your client, you understand your client trusts you, your client is going to follow through, and you are going to be in control of the escrow as you enter into it, and you communicate to that other agent that you are going to get the deal closed, you will greatly increase your chance of getting your offer accepted.
I know, but if that agent has, can get that commission, then doesn't care about any of this. It's happened to me twice. That my offer was much more than the asking price, much more than the one is closed, but then that agent was the seller agent and their son was the buyer agent. That's-
All right, so again, this is just about communication. This is just about communication, and our job is to try to get our offer accepted. That's our job. We need to convince the listing agent to go with us. That's part of what.
Okay, hey, JJ, sorry.
So I want to talk about this real quick because it was brought up. So this is, this is a regular listing agreement. And it says here, it says buyer supplemental offer letters, buyer letters. Paragraph 8 of Fair Housing and Discrimination Advisory attached to this agreement informs seller of the practice of many buyers and their agents of including a buyer letter with an offer to try to influence a seller to accept the buyer's offer. So I've done this. Every mentor before me has advised their agents and taught their agents, if you want to get your offer accepted, have your buyers write a cover letter. This is a great way to get your offer accepted, okay? Buyer letters may include photos and video. Whether overt or unintentional, buyer letters may contain information about a buyer's or seller's protected class or characteristics. Deciding whether to accept an offer based upon protected classes or characteristics is unlawful.
Right.
Broker will not review the content of buyer letters.
Right.
And then by default, it says seller instructs broker not to present buyer letters, whether submitted with an offer or separately at a different time. Seller authorizes broker to specify in the MLS that buyer letters will not be presented. Now, there's also a checkbox here that says seller instructs broker to present buyer letters. Now, what'll happen in real life is if I get an offer and there's a cover letter, I should be saying to my seller, by the way, the buyer submitted a cover letter, would you like me to forward it? Okay, now, this is what I used to do. I used to use a PDF editor and I used to combine the cover letter and the offer into one PDF. Because I wanted my buyer letter to be presented. And if I attached it to my email as separate attachments, the listing agent may have only provided the offer and not the cover letter. So I used a PDF editor to combine them as one PDF. That way, if they printed the PDF or forwarded the PDF, the buyer letter is right on top. This is saying not to do that, like,
Yeah.
right? Okay, like it's up to you.
You should leave
It's up to you. But you have by default, it says that the seller is instructing the broker not to present buyer letters. This language is obviously in here to protect the seller from a discrimination lawsuit.
So
Now-
which one should you
I
if you are the selling
personally,
agent?
I can't advise you. The language is there. I'm not gonna get in trouble.
Okay,
The language defaults you to not do it.
The language defaults you to not do it.
Not good.
To not do it.
okay,
Look, I don't know. I mean,
yeah.
I mean, the seller can ask the agent who the buyer, this guy, I like him.
Look,
What is he?
I mean, does a seller really,
Can ask the
when a seller says to me,
I like this guy, I mean, okay.
I've had a seller say to me, my neighbors will kill me if I accept an offer from that person.
Right, yeah,
I've heard of this.
yes.
My neighbors will kill me. I say, who do you care? You want the most money. What do you care?
Yeah, but
Right.
You care about your neighbor? Do you think they would care about you if they were selling theirs? They want the most money. That's it.
Right, and you're leaving anyway.
For your own legal protection, if you're on the sell side, probably best to lean away from presenting it.
Yeah.
If you're on the
That-
buy
that
side,
solves it.
send it.
Yeah, exactly. That's.
Because if you send it as the buyer's agent, you're not in trouble. They're only in trouble if it influences their decision.
Yeah, I mean, according to this, if we send the letter,
They can look at it or not.
but they instructed us not to. And if we did it, we're liable.
But this is the listing contract.
This is a listing contract.
So as the
Hey,
listing
JJ, I have
agent,
a quick question
Yeah.
before everyone else interrupts. My question was, is there any place that a seller can say, do not present offers from builders or anything along those lines? Or is that just stupid and a no-no?
So if a seller said to me, don't present offers from builders,
Yes.
I would say to them, let's get all the offers we can. You can always
Okay.
ignore it. You can always ignore it.
Ignore it, that's it.
Okay,
But let's not
Thank
tell people not to write an offer. I mean, even if I have an agent that wants to write a lowball offer, I say to them, write your offer, I will present it to the seller. I will never be the decision maker. I'm not the decision maker.
okay, thank you.
Okay,
Is it illegal not to send a counter offer and just write them an email, sorry, we accepted someone else's offer?
so your duty is to present offers as soon as they come in. That's your fiduciary duty to the seller. You're supposed to present the offer. If, when you're talking about legal, so let's go back to the purchase agreement. So when you talk about legal,
That's what I got from people.
now, according to our code of ethics,
Mhm.
because we have a code of ethics, there's a part of the offer here at the end that says,
rejecting you.
yeah, so offer not accepted. The seller can initial this.
Oh.
No contest, obviously, no contest, so.
The buyer's agent that didn't win can request from you proof that the offer was presented to the seller. There's a paragraph here, it says presentation of offer, and it says here agent or seller initial. So the agent, it has to initial here and say what day that the offer was presented to the seller. There's another text box here that says offer not accepted, and the seller can initial here. Now, the buyer's agent cannot insist that the seller sign this. The buyer's agent cannot insist the seller do anything. But the buyer's agent can insist that we say that we presented the offer. So this is our code, according to our code of ethics. So if the buyer's agent wants something in writing that the offer was presented, then we do need to initial this and put and say the date that it was
Well,
presented.
when is the seller is not signing
The
it?
seller doesn't have to sign it.
I know, but it's just.
This is what's in the,
no
this is
proof.
what's in the code of ethics.
Yeah, it's no proof that
It's-
buyer,
exactly, it's
that
not proof.
seller agent.
It's not proof, but it's putting,
That's why I'm
but it's
sure
putting
so
our,
many of them, they don't do it,
it's putting our ethical word
yeah.
on the line. Like, all right, so let's talk about terms. So the name of this class is counters, which we just talked a lot about counters. Now we have amendments, addendums, and modifications. So, well, let's talk about the counter, the terms on the counter. So what could be things that we're countering? So we can counter the price, purchase price to be buyer's highest and best. And we're the listing agent now. The offer comes to us and we need to now counter. So we're countering the price. I would usually put highest and best. Deposit to be 3% of purchase price. If I'm the listing agent and I receive an offer for $1 million with a $30,000 deposit, that's 3%. If I only counter the price, then if I counter at 1-1 and it's accepted, the only deposit that needs to go to escrow is 30,000.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's the whatever's in the original offer. So that's why I'm saying purchase price to be blank, deposit to be 3% of purchase price. If you forget to say deposit to be 3% of purchase price, then it defaults to the number that was written in the original. Liquidated damages and arbitration are a part of this agreement. Will be in all my counters going back to a buyer. Because my seller hasn't fully signed the whole offer yet. Okay, so liquidated damages and arbitration are two parts in the purchase contract that require initialing by both parties. Liquidated damages means if the buyer defaults after contingencies are removed, they will lose up to 3%. They'll lose their deposit actually paid, not to exceed 3%. That requires initialing by both parties. Arbitration is instead of going to court, it's binding. So there's an arbitrator, just like a judge. It's quick. Like to go to court, it could take 2 to 3 years to get a court date. But an arbitrator is quick and it's binding. So those two things, liquidated damages and arbitration, require initials by both parties. Let's say the offer comes in and it's initialed. Those two paragraphs are initialed, but I only give a counter offer. Right? And I didn't give the whole contract. I only gave counter offer to the buyer. The buyer doesn't know if the seller initialed those two paragraphs.
It's kind of sneaky.
Well, the buyer doesn't know. So when we write an offer, I include in my offer on other terms, I write my offer, my buyer initials those two paragraphs, and I write in other terms, seller agrees to initial paragraphs, 29 and 31. It's in my template offer. Because I want the seller to initial those two paragraphs.
Can you show it to us?
Yeah.
And you showed us this a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, it's okay. So.
I know where it is, but I want to see when you counter, where do you write that?
Okay, so I'm just gonna go to my contracts transaction.
You want to know where it is in the purchase agreement or?
No, I know where it is in the
counter?
purchase agreement, but he says that when he counters,
You write it in the same place, other terms.
in other terms, I have to include that in writing.
So here is whenever you're in CAR and you don't see your documents, if they're not appearing, this is a little tip here. There's a little back arrow right there. For some reason, sometimes things don't appear. Just hit that little back arrow and they all of a sudden appear.
Oh.
Okay, it's a glitch. It's a glitch. All right, residential purchase agreement. I'm just using the classic editor right this second. In the regular purchase agreement, I include down here,
Yeah, and
other terms, seller agrees to initial paragraphs 29 and 31, liquidated damages and arbitration. I include that in my offer. Because I don't know if I only get a counter back if it's part of the deal, right? So paragraphs 29 and 31 are here. They require initials by both parties.
Yeah. But if you initial, what do you need to write that?
Okay, so now in my counter offer, I'm gonna say purchase price to be highest and best, buyer's highest and best. Deposit to be 3% of purchase price. And my next thing is liquidated damages and arbitration are a part of this agreement. So that's in my counter to the buyer. If I am presenting a counter with the RPA, I don't need to have that term. If my seller has already initialed paragraphs 29 and 31. Because don't forget, my seller is going to initial every page and sign it and check the box subject to counter offer, right? But during the time they're signing and initialing everything, they can initial paragraphs 29 and 31. So then I don't need that term in my counter offer if they're doing it, because the buyer can now see that it's part of it. All right, so now's the time where we need to tell the buyer who our escrow and title are. The buyer may have put seller's choice for escrow and title, and they may have also put their own escrow and title officer. So now's our chance in our counter offer to say who we're using for escrow and title. I like to get it, I don't like anything to be left up for discussion. Everything should be agreed to in finality in the offer and counter offer stage. Nothing should be left for future. So here I put escrow to be Cannon Hills Closings, Pele, title to be Clearmark Title, Jerry Ferris. Yes.
We're not doing Lauren anymore?
So Lauren and Brandon are also part of the office. Clearmark happens to be owned by the owner of this office also, so I'm supposed to push them. Use Clearmark. But you know what? Are we, do you use Clearmark for title stuff? Like if you're using Clearmark for your research, it's nice to give them a deal. Like, you know, if you're using, whoever you're using, give them a deal. I like to use Clearmark for research. I love Lauren. Brandon was the first title officer I ever used. We joined real estate at the same time. When I went to my orientation at the Board of Realtors, Brandon spoke, and that's where I met him. Yeah, question? Forgot your question.
No, if we don't have escrow and all that in the original contract,
So-
and now we're putting.
Right, yes,
Putting in Cannon Hills and Clearmark and everybody,
yeah.
but they already have. They already.
So in real life,
Escrow, does our escrow?
it's gonna be whoever countered last.
Okay,
That's
and that's the one that we're gonna use.
whoever countered last is the agreed upon.
Okay, and both parties agree to that.
Yes.
Okay.
So let's say you wrote in your offer that you're using Provident and Equity.
Yeah.
And then I counter you Cannon Hills and Jared, Clearmark. And then you counter back Provident and Equity, and I only counter you back on price. It's Provident and Equity. It's the last one.
Seller choose the.
So
seller.
usually a listing agent will have a relationship with an escrow and title officer. Usually they'll have a long-standing relationship and they like to use those people. The reason they like to use them is because they know that they're good.
Right.
They know they're good. I mean,
How about how much they charge?
and how much they charge is important too. So the way that I write my offer is each to pay the same low fee. That's how I write my offer. So I just like to keep things on an even playing field. So each to pay the same low fee is what I write in my purchase agreement. I think this is my purchase agreement. So
Each to pay the same low fee.
here,
What does that mean?
on paragraph Q7, escrow fee. Who's paying the escrow fee? The buyer, the seller, each to pay their own fees. I check the box both and I write the same low rate. Both to pay the same low rate. That's how I fill out my purchase agreement.
What's the difference between that or each to pay their own fees?
Because if each can pay their own fees, they can pay different fees.
Uh-huh.
The listing agent can pay a really low fee and the buyer can pay a really high fee. I like to keep it, right?
That's the reason.
Okay, that's there's a reason behind my math.
When you are listing agent, you have that power.
So that's why I fill it out the way I do, both to pay the same low rate. Now, sometimes you're gonna have a offer that comes in or a counter offer, and they put a really short expiration date on it. By default, the offer is good for 3 days until 5 p.m. So if I get an offer today, what's today, Wednesday? If I get an offer today, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it's good until Saturday at 5 p.m.
Oh, it's not business day.
No, calendar days, calendar days. Offer is good for 3 calendar days until 5 p.m.
Saturday is a calendar day.
It's a calendar day.
Sunday.
Yeah, it's a calendar day.
But Sunday, no.
The only thing that matters, well, the only thing that's business days in the purchase agreement is deposit. Because you can't make a deposit on a weekend or a holiday. So the deposit is business days. Now, if you're talking about contingency removal or closing escrow, those are things that can only be done on a weekday. Basically what there's a term in the purchase contract and it's called days. Define days, what does days mean? And performance of an act. So performance of an act as contingency removal, signing a contingency removal form. Performance of an act can't fall on a weekend or holiday. Okay, that's performance of an act. Obviously, deposit can't be done on a weekend or holiday, so it doesn't, doesn't matter. But okay, now a offer is good for 3 days until 5 p.m. A counter offer is good for 3 days until 5 p.m. That can also be shortened. So if I'm writing an offer today on Wednesday, I would really like to get an answer before Friday, by Friday sundown. I want an offer. I wanted my answer by Friday at 5 p.m. So I'm going to shorten it. I'm going to put the expiration on my counter offer. This counter offer is good until Friday at 5 p.m. Let's say exactly. Let's say for anything. I want quick decisions. You know, it's really important to get quick decisions in real estate. If you leave time on the table, anything can happen. Remember I was saying remember you had counters offer out and buyer 3 came with a high offer out of nowhere? That's because there was too much time. I want things quick, like there's no time. I don't want to give time for this to happen or that to happen. If I have a really long escrow, like I'm talking to a seller now, my seller was like, I need 60 days. I'm like, no, you don't need 60 days. You need a 30-day escrow with a 30-day leaseback. Because let's close escrow, let's get the money. If you have a 60-day escrow, anything can happen, right? Something can happen and then the escrow doesn't close. Let's get the money and allow you to stay in the property and you'll lease it back from the buyer. Right? We want quick.
What
So
if your
now-
offer comes in late in the day?
So days are considered until expiring at 11:59 p.m. But according to the contract, it's good until 5 p.m. Now, we can shorten the response time. So now a term that you might want to use is you might be, okay, just say you have a listing and it says all offers due by, and it's like 7 days from now, right? So you're the listing agent and you have people are sending you offers, which now they're expired because you're still waiting an entire week before you're going to respond to anybody. And you put in the MLS offers due by a certain day, which is 7 days from now. But I send you my offer today. You understand? You're a listing agent. You're sending a really low price. You know you're going to get a ton of offers. And you wrote in the listing offers due by, what's today, the 21st? 23rd? What is it? I have no idea. What day is it?
Imagine listing agent put that the offers.
Offers due by the 30th.
By 30th.
By the 30th. You put offers due by 5 p.m. on the 30th. Okay, but I submit my offer today. It expires in 3 days. Okay, so now on your counter offer to me, you should write, I mean, it really doesn't matter, but you should write, buyer's counter offer expiration is hereby extended through receipt of this counter offer. It's just an extension. For those of you at home, I'll put this in my shared folder. in contracts. So you'll have it. It's called counters, amendments, addendums, and modifications. So I'll put it in the folder, so you'll have it. So you're basically extending their counteroffer expiration time. So that was the buyer's counteroffer expiration is hereby extended through receipt of this counteroffer. Additional terms that may be used in the counteroffer, again, shortening contingencies. Properties being sold as is, where is. There are some sellers that are gonna want you to put that in the counteroffer, even though the purchase agreement says it's as is. There are sellers that will want you to add the as is language. You can put that in there. If there's something with the property that doesn't have permits, I need to add here about exclusions, because this is the place. If something is excluded, you better put it in the counteroffer. If the dining room chandelier is excluded in the MLS and it's excluded in the emails, and everyone's aware that the dining room chandelier is excluded, but it's not excluded in the contract, it's part of the deal.
Really?
Yes, the contract is stands. Doesn't matter what's in the MLS or what's in emails, doesn't matter. The contract, it goes by the contract. Because what's to stop the buyer from saying, I offered more for it? That's why I offered the price I offered, because of that. Doesn't matter what's in the MLS, I wrote my price based upon the chandelier.
Should we add it also in the counteroffer
It
again?
should be in the counteroffer. If there's something excluded, you better put it in the counteroffer, because if it's not there, you're gonna start owing your sellers a chandelier, right? Big problem. You know what's included in property now? Water features. So if your seller has statues, really expensive statues in the back, and let's say 2 of those statues spit water into the pool,
Yeah.
they're included because they're water features. All right. You can also say that something's not permitted. Like if you have like an outdoor space that's not permitted, here's the place to put it in your counter, it's not permitted. You might also have a buyer that you don't know who their lender is. Like it's some off the wall lender in Timbuktu and you don't know who they are. Like, can they really get a loan? You can write in here, buyer to be pre-qualified by Movement Mortgage by May Shall Who, and put her phone number, or you can put your whatever lender you want. And they don't have to use them, but you want them to talk to the lender and the lender. So you want your lender to say, yeah, they can get a loan. Right? There are a lot of lenders that would love to talk to those people because it's an opportunity for the lender to win them.
But if they have their own lender.
That's fine. But I want to make sure, I don't know who that lender is. I want to make sure they can get a loan. So talk to May, let May talk to you. And then if May says that she can make the loan, then okay. Then I'm comfortable with that. I just want to make sure that my lender has talked to the buyer and that she's saying that they can get a loan.
So what about if buyer said, no, I have my own lender?
Then I'll have May contact their lender
To just verify that they're good lenders?
to verify that they've qualified the buyer. I want to make sure that they've actually looked at the buyer's credit, looked at the buyer's tax returns, looked at the buyer's income. Not just talk to them on the
Don't
phone.
I get the pre-approval letter anyways with my offer?
Yeah, but if it's a pre-approval from Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank, those have to be computed, those can only be generated after the lender's inputting all their information into the computer. So that's a legit pre-approval. But if it's a mortgage broker, I don't know. Did they really verify everything?
No, lots of them, they just give
They just give a letter.
They just get a letter, right?
The
So
letter is not considered.
it's not, the letter's a letter. It's just a piece of paper. I mean, I want to know that someone actually looked. So the communication with the lender is, did you look at did you pull their credit? Did you run their credit? Have you looked at their tax returns? Did they provide evidence of income?
Okay, what's the language? Can you just repeat the language, what you're saying?
It's on here. It's number 4 of the second paragraph 4.
Oh, okay.
Buyer to be pre-qualified by Movement Mortgage, May Shall Who, or your choice of lender. This is to make sure that the buyer can really get a loan. Okay, now also let's talk about backup offers real quick. Okay, what is a backup offer? A backup offer, an accepted backup offer, talks about position 1, position 2, position 3. If you have an accepted backup position 1 offer, that means if the current escrow cancels, you are automatic, your buyer is automatically the new buyer. Automatically. So let's say, I'm the seller and two offers came in. And they both came in at $1 million. I countered both at 1-1. And then there was just, they both accepted the 1-1, but there was just something about this buyer that was better. My seller chose that buyer and we went with them. They did their inspections, something happened, they back out. But this person had an accepted buyer counter 1, accepted. And then a new buyer came in out of nowhere with a higher offer, 1.150. The seller cannot sell to the 1.150 because I had an accepted backup number 1. They are the new buyer. Yeah.
What did you say? Like you have 3 days to accept an offer? If it's been in escrow for 30 days, then what happens then?
So give me the example.
For the backup offer, let's say the escrow failed and you went to the.
But when was so on the backup offer, there's an expiration date.
Oh, got it. Okay.
On the backup offer addendum, it says that the seller is bound until a certain date. So as the buyer's agent, I want to get as much time as possible on that date.
Does the seller also sign the
The
backup
seller has to
offer?
sign it. If it's not signed, it's
backup
not,
offer?
they have to sign it. The backup offer addendum. So if there's already an accepted offer on the property, I'm going to write my offer and attach a backup offer addendum attached to my offer. If I'm the listing agent and I got my offers already and we're going with one, there's another person that I want to be a backup. I'm gonna call them and I'll say, do you want to be backup 1? And then I will have my seller sign. I'll give them a counter offer with a backup offer addendum attached. I'll tell my seller, let's get a backup offer addendum from these people, because then I can tell this buyer that we're accepting that we have a backup offer. It puts pressure on the current buyer from negotiating too hard, because they know we can go with the other buyer.
Right.
Right? That's good. Okay, so now what's the difference between an addendum and an amendment? Talk about that real quick. So let's just talk about like what are samples of addendums. An addendum doesn't change the contract. An amendment changes the contract. We're amending the contract. We're changing it. An addendum is an addition. Okay, so what could be addendums? So I just went on the CAR and searched for addendum and it listed all the addendums. So addendum number 1, that's the most popular addendum there is. It can be attached to any contract. Addendum 1 is just a giant paragraph and you can fill in whatever you want. There's an additional signature addendum. So let's just say you have 4 sellers on a property. There's only a place on the contract for 2 people to sign. You can use the additional signature addendum and the additional 2 people can sign that. Remember before I was looking for the pet addendum? It's no longer called a pet addendum. It's called an animal terms and conditions addendum.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know. I don't know why they changed it, but it talks about service animals too. So without being liable for something, let's say you have a landlord that says no pets, right? But you can't say no pets if it's a service animal. There are people who are allowed to have a service animal,
Right.
right? Don't quote me on this, please don't quote me on this. Without being quoted on this, I think you can ask that person, what is your service animal trained to do? What are they trained to assist with? Okay, I think a service animal has to be trained to do something. It can't just be an emotional support animal. It has to be.
Not anymore. 'cause
I
it
don't
used to
think
be.
so. It used to be, okay, yeah. I think the only question you can ask, what is this service animal trained to assist with?
Is there like a license or something that would say that? Like something in.
They have something.
There is something,
Yeah,
there is something you can order on Amazon and fill out. I don't know.
None of them are official.
Right, so-
None of them are.
Right, so
You can still get away with.
I happen to have a landlord that had a tenant, the tenant's dog bit someone. And the person that got bit sued the tenant and the landlord.
Fine.
So my landlord is like, now, I don't want pets, because I don't want to get sued.
Right.
Right? The landlord is gonna get sued. If the tenant has a dog and the dog bites someone, the landlord is going to get sued with the tenant. So it's an issue for some landlords that have been sued, right? You know, basically in my listings for my leases, it says pets, yes, no, or call. I put call. And then I leave it up to the landlord if they want to approve the dog or not. I mean, you know, people, if someone calls me and says, do you allow animals? I'll say, is it a Rottweiler, German Shepherd?
That's not considered discriminatory.
I'll say, is it an aggressive animal? Because, you know,
I'm gonna tell you, he's so nice, he's a Rottweiler.
I have a
and he's nice.
Rottweiler service animal, could be, and then I'll say, what is it trained to do? And then I'll tell my seller, but, you know, I don't know.
But you can't disqualify them
I have
based
no
on that.
idea, I really don't know.
I know.
At that point, I would advise my landlord to check with LA Housing and have them deal with it. I'm not getting into the legal aspect of can they or can't they,
Oh.
right? I have no
No
idea.
pets, and I assume the deal said.
No pets, okay, I just don't know. These laws are always changing.
There's no pets.
We're not lawyers. I mean, you know, there is an addendum, okay? They can look at the addendum. So the addendum is called Animal Terms and Conditions Addendum.
I see.
There's an assignment of agreement addendum. I'm just gonna go through these just so you know they exist. Just the fact that I'm reading them and you hear and you know they exist, you'll remember when this situation comes up that there's an addendum for this. Okay, so there's an assumed financing addendum, a backup offer addendum, buyer early occupancy addendum. Buyer wants to move in early. No, but there's an addendum for it. Court confirmation addendum, like in probate, you need court confirmation, or in a, you know, there could be a bankruptcy, things like that. Delivery of increased deposit addendum. There's a housing provider in default addendum, key safe lockbox addendum. There is a mixed use purchase addendum, options and upgrades addendum for new construction. There's a pool, hot tub and spa addendum. I would recommend if you are representing a landlord and there's a pool spa, you have this addendum because it's a liability, right? So pool, hot tub and spa addendum. There's a probate agreement purchase addendum. Property management addendum. We don't do property management. Rent cap adjust cause addendum, which is included in leases. Residential units purchase addendum. Seller financing addendum. Seller license to remain in possession addendum. Seller's intent to exchange addendum.
These are all in the.
These are all addendum. It's all, I'm just saying what these addendums that exist. There's a septic addendum. Like if you have a house that's on septic.
Yeah.
Or you're writing an offer that, and instead of a sewer, it's on septic. There's a septic addendum. There's a short sale addendum. There's a stock cooperative purchase addendum. You know, we don't have this as much in California as they do on the East Coast. They have co-ops. So there might be a property that didn't qualify to become condominiums, but they did, instead of being condos, they're a co-op. And it's basically a corporation, and each person living in a unit has ownership, a certain percentage ownership of the corporation. So there's an addendum for that. There's a tenancy in common purchase addendum. Tenant occupied property addendum. You might be buying a property that has a tenant in it. There's an addendum for that. Trust signature addendum. Okay, so those are just addendums. Now, amendments. What's an amendment? An amendment is a change to an agreement. So yes.
Before you go to amendment, I think you already know my question. What is the addendum that you can add another agent to a transaction as a co-buyer's agent?
So there is a additional agent acknowledgement.
So what is additional brokerage acknowledgement?
That's when you have two brokers. So you can have two agents. You can have two agents in the same brokerage, or you can have an agent in separate brokerages. So you'll have the additional agent acknowledgement if two agents are in the same brokerage, and you'll have additional broker acknowledgement if you have agents in different brokerages.
Okay. So I mean this one. Thank you.
Okay, amendment of existing terms. So an amendment, if you have a buyer and seller that have agreed upon something and they want to change that, you'll need an amendment to change it. Terms.
Like the price?
Yeah. Like
Price
Individual
exchange?
price adjustment.
There's an amendment called extension of time amendment. If they need an extension, there's an amendment for that. Amendment of existing terms would be a listing agent and a seller for a price reduction or an extension of the listing. That would be an amendment of existing terms. If you have a buyer representation agreement that only was for 10 days, the buyer wanted to make sure that you're really working hard for them and you want to extend that, there's amendment, a buyer amendment. There's an amendment of existing terms. So basically so an amendment can be between a buyer and seller that are changing the terms of an originally agreed upon term. And an amendment can also be between a listing agent and the seller or the buyer who they have a buyer representation agreement signed with. You can amend that. But then there's also the extension of time. So there's a form called modification of listing, buyer representation or other agreement between principal and broker. So
What's the between modification and amendment?
between modification and amendment, same thing,
It's the same thing.
same thing. But in a modification is going to be modification of listing.
Oh,
An amendment is going to be, I mean, they're basically the same. They could be used interchangeably. Escrow will always use the word amendment. Escrow amendment on anything that they give because they have an original set of escrow instructions. So basically, according to escrow, anything you do after the original document is signed, the original purchase agreement, anything that happens after that is an amendment. Because escrow was given instructions with these terms. And escrow just said, these are the terms. Anything that gets changed after that is an amendment, according to escrow. I want to just finish up, then I'll take questions, but one thing on the lease. In the lease contract, I just want to say, so, let's see if I have the lease here. It's really important when you guys sign lease listings. Basically how we get paid on a lease. So here's the residential lease listing agreement. Okay. In the lease listing agreement, the following, it says tenant payment. The following are due and payable to the residential property owner, I guess, unless otherwise specified. So broker commissions deducted from initial funds due to the residential property owner and execute. That's really important.
Oh, wow.
To add into your lease listing agreement. I like to have this conversation up front with my landlords that commissions will get paid by the tenant when they make their check to you. So the way that works is, let's say, okay, so let's say we have a lease that's $5,000 a month. And the listing agreement was signed at 6%, which gets divided by 2. So it's 3% to the buyer's agent, 3% to the seller's agent. It's tenant, landlord, buyer is the tenant, seller is the landlord. How do we get paid? If money, we agreed on a lease, $5,000 a month. So what happens is that 5,000 times 12 is $60,000 for the whole year. And then we get paid on that. So it's going to be $1,800. $1,800 to the buyer's agent, $1,800 to the seller's agent. Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And then let's say that the landlord agreed to get first month and 2 month security. So 15,000 is supposed to go to the landlord. Right? First month plus 2 months security is 15,000. instead of the tenant writing a check for $15,000 to the landlord, we're gonna subtract the commissions. So
1,800.
So 15,000 times 3% is,
Oh,
No.
oh, I'm sorry.
1,600 minus 1,800.
60,000.
yeah, not the security.
60,000 times 3% is 900,
Would have been nice.
1,800.
1,800. You saw.
Sorry, 1,800. Okay. So we're gonna subtract 15,000 minus 3,600. Okay, whatever that is, what is it? 11,4. Okay, 11,4 will go to the landlord. So the tenant, instead of making one check for 15,000, they're gonna make 3 checks. One for 11,4 to the landlord, one for 1,800 to the other brokerage, and one for 1,800 to Keller Williams.
The listing agent will get it.
The listing agent's gonna get a check for 1,800,
Right.
the tenant's agent's gonna get a check for 1,800, and the landlord's gonna get a check for 11,4. Okay, that's how we get paid. If we don't do it like this, we'll never get paid.
Right.
We're not a collection agency.
Yes.
If all the money goes to the landlord, the check's in the mail. Okay, every brokerage does it like this. They're supposed to do it like this. If an agent doesn't do it like this, they haven't learned, like they don't know, they just don't know, it's out of ignorance. Because if they go to their broker, they go to their office manager, they're gonna tell them to do it like this. And we have a form called dispersion of funds, distribution of funds,
Keller Williams disposition,
disposition of funds.
lease disposition.
Every lease disposition, every brokerage has that form. Okay, so this is how it's done. I just want you guys to know, when you sign your lease listing agreement, put in there that the commissions will come out of the initial funds due to the landlord. Okay, so we're telling the landlord up front, that's how we get paid. The landlord's not gonna have an issue with it.
No,
Initial funds to whom?
broker commission.
Initial funds,
It doesn't-
so commissions to be paid from initial funds due to landlord. I think I put it on the on what I handed out.
I have a question, but is he allowed to not accept this and say, no, I'm gonna pay you from my check or whatever, or
So why is he saying that?
like you said, you wanna play games or what, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the problem. I mean, the problem is that, okay, here's the real problem. The real problem is our broker's on the hook for the money. Because our broker is an MLS member. And because in the MLS, our brokerage is advertising the commission, our brokerage is the one liable to pay the commission. Our broker is willing to do that because we have a signed listing agreement. So technically, our broker will have to pay it to the buyer's agent, and then our broker will need to sue the seller for the commission to recoup it. But the broker's on the hook.
But he must sign this, basically, the landlord have to sign this, he's agreeing.
If the landlord doesn't want to sign it, I want to know why.
Yeah.
So
For sure they will sign it. They want you to list.
they'll sign it. They'll sign it. Now, there are some management companies that they use Yardi or some kind of accounting, and it'll mess up their accounting, like if they only collect this and it's supposed to be this, and they don't know how to do the accounting on the computer system. I still want to do it like this. I don't care. Let them figure it out.
Yeah.
Because we get paid immediately. I want to get paid.
You have to
I
check.
can't, there have been a few times where agents have been waiting months to get paid. Months. But and it's their own fault,
Right.
because it should have been done like this, right? And no one told them, I'm telling you. Yeah.
I did have this happen one time because I had a landlord who had a similar accounting issue, but he was like a standalone landlord. What I had him do was, okay, at time of delivery of your deposit, you want them to make the check out directly to you. At time of delivery of deposit, you need to have a cashier's check or money order made payable to my brokerage, same time.
And exchange it.
Yes, same time on exchange.
Also talking about money. Whenever, we're not supposed to handle funds. We're advised not to handle funds. If we ever do handle a check made by anyone, we need to register it with Victoria. Okay, so she's right on the other side of this wall. she will have, there's a form that gets filled out and it just says, what's the check number? How much is the amount of the check? What property is it for? Who's holding the check? And then I'm holding it, and then I register the check. And then when I give it to the landlord, I'll write on it, I'll just go back to that same form and say, now landlord is in possession of it on today.
Can the tenant pay through the Zoom or through the Zelle?
Electronic, okay. It's a good question.
I mean,
So
I only get,
it's a good question. On the,
did you say that?
on the lease, residential lease.
Yeah, or you said
So
that.
on the residential lease, there is a part here about how payments are gonna be, how payments are gonna be made. One of them is wire electronic payment.
Yeah, he said that.
So here's the danger on a wire electronic payment. It's gonna get accepted. What do you do? And I'm just throwing this hypothetically. What happens if the rent is $5,000 a month?
Right,
The tenant makes an electronic transfer for $4,000
right.
and then does the same thing the month after and does the same thing the month after. Now, 3 consecutive months, the tenant has paid $4,000
All 4,000, why?
because they just did. It couldn't get refused. If I was trying to give a check to the landlord for $4,000, the landlord could say, I'm not accepting that check, I want $5,000. But because it was an electronic transfer, they made 3 consecutive payments of $4,000. Now I can prove as a tenant that the landlord accepts my $4,000. My rent is now.
Nobody will accept it. Nobody will accept it.
No one will accept it, but an
No,
electronic.
the land comes, you pay me less $1,000, where is the rest?
But I had a verbal agreement that it was okay. $4,000.
But what about landlord just immediately
But that's
send you
verbal
message or
agreement,
Okay,
emails?
but then, yeah, that was sent, but then I called him and he said it was okay. I'm just saying it can create,
Oh, but on the lease agreement, it says how much is the rent,
of
how
course,
much is the
right,
security.
but you can change, you can always change it.
You can have it, so in that example, I do it 3 times, we go to
No,
court.
but they signed the lease, they are supposed to pay 6%. It's on the lease
I'm
agreement.
just
They
saying,
will
so
have
if you're
to
accepting
calculate.
electronic payment, there is a danger
Really?
that it could come to a dispute.
And here's what'll happen. I do that 3 times. We go to court. I said, nope. I called JJ after each time. I did it for 3 months and he told me it was okay. The judge is gonna say, JJ, can you prove you didn't do that? I win.
But can you show it to me on the,
Our verbal agreement has just superseded that
you can
lease.
show it on yourself, on your Zelle,
Yeah.
on your Venmo, have you paid that much
Thank you,
money?
JJ.
Yeah, I paid 4,000 each time.
Thank you.
You have a record. of-
All I'm saying to the landlord is if you accept electronic payment, you need to understand that this could happen. You could have a situation where the tenant pays less consistently and creates a situation. I'm just making them aware. If they want to accept it, that's fine. I'm not making decisions for them. I'm just saying it could create an issue. It could.
But then you're violating the term of the lease.
I think that the companies that provide automatic payment do ACH, right? They'll ACH out of a bank account,
Yeah,
but they are collecting the entire amount. If there's $1 short, that won't happen.
that was right.
Right, so that's an ACH pull.
Oh,
So that's for sure gonna be a complete amount. Because, right, because they're not gonna take a portion, they're gonna only take the full.
yeah.
Right, so the problem is when you allow the tenant to do it themselves, they can do a lower amount.
The worst case scenario too, even if the tenant isn't trying to manipulate their rent into being lower, any dollar that the owner accepts from the tenant creates tenancy for the next month. So if I just sent it, if my rent was $5,000 and I sent him $100 via Zelle, yeah, I'm $4,900 short, but he still can't evict me for 30 days.
You can't?
Nope. Because he's
And
accepting.
trying to evict someone in California too.
Because you've accepted money.
A little follow-up question. Can the landlord just return that
I'm renting.
short rent?
If that's probably the right thing to do, and say, I don't accept partial payments, that would be the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, good. Good follow-up.
If you're short, I say you're short.
I have another question, JJ.
Okay,
Wow.
I have a situation where I'm trying to schedule a showing
okay,
and the listing agent was very adamant about knowing who my client is before scheduling the showing. Is that normal?
For a lease or a buy.
I mean, look, the seller The seller owns the property and they want to know who's coming into their property, so.
So if you were the buyer's agent and a listing agent asked you for the name, the first name, last name of the person coming to see the place, you'd give it up?
So a listing agent asking for a name might also be because if the property doesn't sell, they need a list of names to exclude from their contract.
Right, but then that can happen after the showing, not before. Like this is a requirement.
I would not think that it's crazy. I wouldn't push back on it. If a listing agent wants to know the name of the person coming, I would give it.
Okay, all right. That's a matter of opinion, I guess, because it depends on who you ask, you get a different answer.
It's true, but if I have a seller that wants to know who's coming to their house and my seller is adamant about it, and I have a buyer's agent who wants to do a showing with someone I don't know and they won't tell me who it is, I have no problem telling them they can't come.
Okay, understood.
AJ, do we have access to the recordings of your classes?
You do.
What do I need to ask? Does Brittany still work here?
Sophia. So Sophia is in her job. She's right on the other side of this wall.
That's where Brittany was.
Yeah, Sophia's there.
Okay.
So it's still the same email address, agentservices@kwbeverlyhills.com.
Okay,
And just email her and say, can I get a copy of today's file?
okay.
Yeah.
What Johnny paid, Johnny was cheap.
How many people were done?
We're done. Unless there are any questions, I'm happy to answer.
I have a question. What is
Go ahead.
bold? The BOLD?
Bold is a good
Oh,
thing.
what is bold? Okay, I mentioned bold to you before and I didn't tell you more about
I
it.
know, it's been like an hour. I'm like thinking about
Okay,
it.
so bold is bold. So
Go there tomorrow and sign. That's
So
all.
bold is offered as a coaching, it's a separate coaching class by Keller Williams, which is an intense lead generation class. And it's not just lead generation, it's also scripts and dialogues, it's habits, change of how you look at things. And the second class is tomorrow. So there was one class 2 weeks ago. It's every Thursday. And it starts, tomorrow is basically number 2, really getting into it tomorrow. And it has to do with making 20 contacts a day, having 20 real estate conversations a day.
Okay.
And what to say. So a whole shift in the attitude when you go about your business. So,
Where do you find it?
so right here.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, that's it. And I can start whenever. I don't have to like start now.
You can start tomorrow, but if you don't start tomorrow, then you have to wait for another bold to come to LA.
And it's.
It's offered quarterly. I think quarterly.
Okay.
JJ,
Yes.
JJ, this is Stephanie from Zoom.
Hi.
Yeah, hi, JJ. Yeah, so how can we register to the boat?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
How can we get the
commission, please?
How can you register for bold?
Yes.
I would email
אז אתה מקבל את הכל אתה.
Serena.
Okay.
There is a QR code. I just don't know how to. Let me see if I can. Let me see if I can hold this up to the camera and make it work. Sharing. I see Sean here.
Really?
Let's see.
There is much easier.
כן? רק השפה, צריך ללמוד את הווקבולרי החדש.
And
What are you trying to do, JJ?
I'm trying to have the camera.
זה פה בכל מקום, כן.
טוב, יאללה, בעזרת השם.
Uh,
אי אפשר לדעת, נכון?
Someone sent the link, JJ.
what?
משה.
Stop the share, JJ.
יש לך סושיאל מדיה?
Someone sent the link.
ענת ארביב.
I just put the link in the chat, but I know.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
oh,
good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
See, it's a
I got a
JJ, what's
got a
the,
question.
hello? JJ,
Yes,
what's
Yeah.
the KW Market Center number?
453.
Sorry, אני משקפיים. There we go. אז אני...
453. If you want to know
או שאם
your,
יש לך שאלות, אני יודעת שיש לך...
if you want to know your
נהדר.
KW,
טלפון שלי.
Well, what's the other, what's the attendees?
KW ID.
תודה. JJ, you're the
What's
best.
the attendees KW ID?
Thank you.
What's that?
Oh, stop it.
I'm looking for my chat.
There is a link right next to KWUID where you can look up your own, right there on the registration page.
That is right here. Are you looking for the chats?
Sean,
Yeah.
because I only see white pages.
Where's my chat?
Yeah, so your KWUID is going to be on your white pages.
Oh, white pages. Okay, cool. I see that. Okay.
So click on the link to go to white pages, then look for yourself, and you'll see your KWUID.
Oh, you're so smart, Sean.
Sean is smart.
JJ,
Yes.
I have it doesn't sit right when someone asks the question about the asking the names of the people that are coming to the home, because sometimes I know we're staying away from any kind of discrimination, but when you hear people's names, you can kind of figure out their ethnicity.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let's say you own a house and you hate your neighbor. Absolutely despise your neighbor. And your house is for sale. You're not having any open houses and you do not want your neighbor to come in. Do you think it's right? Do you think it's right that your neighbor can come in?
No, not if you don't want them to come in.
Okay, there you go. It's still the seller's house and they still have authority to say who can and who cannot come in. If they allow you to do an open house, then that's public. But if they're not doing open houses and it's by appointment only, they have every right to know who's coming into their house.
Okay, so they can't deny someone just because of the name.
I mean,
They just want
there better be a reason and they better be prepared to stand behind it.
Right, they just want a list of the names. They're not gonna say, oh, it's...
I mean, look, if I have a seller like that, I may at that point say, better find another agent. I'll refer it out. I don't know. I'm not gonna be that agent.
Right, it just seems like, people can't be that way. They can be like, oh, that sounds like somebody.
That's not someone I'm dealing with. That's for sure not someone I'm dealing with.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay. All right, guys, I'm signing out.
Oh, one more question.
Okay, one more question. Sorry.
So,
Okay.
I see on white pages, do I have to fill that whole information out to get my
No.
attendee? Okay.
No. If you look yourself up in the white pages, that's where you can find your KW user ID.
Yes, but I see associates information, market center information. Where do I click?
Are you looking? Did you find yourself yet or not yet?
Not yet.
Oh, just search by your last name. Just put your last name and press search.
Okay, let's see.
And then you should see yourself in Beverly Hills. And then click on yourself.
Wait, JJ, it requires to put my first name, last name.
No, it shouldn't. No, it's not. These are just search terms. So the more fields. Yeah.
Can I click associate information?
I'll show you right now. So if I go to mykw.kw.com, it's going to take me to this page. I have to sign in.
Right.
Give me 1 second.
Wait, let me do that real quick.
Yeah. All right, so KW. Okay. Got it.
There's Wednesday.
Okay, so when I get here and then I go to white pages.
Wait.
Yeah. Did you got to this screen, right? So yeah, you're gonna click on associate information.
Yes.
From the associate information page, I'm just gonna put my last name, Wallack, and hit enter. And then it'll take me to me. I can find any KW agent in the world. in this white pages.
Last
I can
name.
search by phone number, I can search by last name, first name, I can search by market center.
Mm-mm. Oh,
Right.
yeah. Okay, yes, I got it. Thank you.
All right, guys, I'm signing off. Have a good day.
For your time.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.